Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as usual, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Grain Market Blast. It is Monday. If you blinked over the weekend, you probably missed it. Unfortunately, it is what we usually do on a Monday. The mighty, the great Angie, the goddess of grain herself, will be giving us a run through of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I'll put out the usual disclaimer that nothing discussed on this Spaces podcast session, whatever you want to call it, is to be taken as trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by ourselves. And, without me blabbing on anymore, Angie, how are you?
Woohoo! I'm all right. It's Monday. The markets
It's
are,
Monday.
doing,
They're there.
yeah, whatever the hell this is called. I was trying to think of like a creative, fun, technical term to call it, and I just didn't have one. I should have thought ahead further than this. But so let's start with because on Friday I was kind of like, oh, today could be really good, it could be really bad, it could be really whatever, and it was a call that could have been an email. Let's say maybe, and I guess I wasn't on the inside of the phone call. Both parties kind of described it as candid and productive. And so we're candid and productive, but there were no changes when it comes to the attitude towards agriculture. And a lot of folks now are like, wait a minute. He didn't even mention soybeans, you guys. Like that's part of the, post meeting.
How dare he? How
right?
very dare he?
Yeah, like he didn't even say that he brought him up, and so that was kind of the reaction post meeting. Obviously, we're right back down to, we traded right back down to what had been support in the market. And then of course this morning, first thing we get the next shoe to drop, and that is the RG tax announcement. And so just to kind of first bullet point you'll see in this is like the China conversation. And honestly, that we have a TikTok agreement that's somewhat positive. We have an in-person meeting scheduled maybe the end of October, first part of November. And the APEC meeting is the 31st of October and November 1st. And then, maybe Trump goes to Beijing next year and Xi comes to us at some point. But yeah, overall there was limited progress, you could say, and a reduction of anything in that regard. And everyone was a bit disappointed. Now on to the RG tax deal here. And so we've been talking about the situation in Argentina for a hot minute, right? Like after the Buenos Aires election results, the mayoral election results, where it wasn't just the other party opposite of Milei. It was your Peronist party, and not to mention it was a very popular, should I say, I always feel like I'm like appropriating someone's culture when I try to say like Peronist, Peronist. I don't know if I'm putting the emphasis on the right syllable, but either way, you can,
I'll be honest. Anyone that listened to the Morning Blast this morning will know that I could not pronounce about 4 different words.
Yeah,
today,
that's
so
what I'm like.
No,
I am only intelligent in written word, you guys. Like if I have to start,
I wouldn't go that far for me.
Right? If I have to start sounding shit out, we're both screwed. So, but you have the Peronos, the left leaning. Let's go with,
There we go.
Milei is very much a libertarian. I'm not even going to say heavy right because he's very free market policies. He's very this, that, and the other thing. And it basically kind of allowed the currency to free float to a certain extent. And after that mayoral election, because of the negative sort of results, because of the idea that this guy who was a part of the former administration, he was very popular, very charismatic, very much liked on the left, you know what I mean? And so his sort of return to popularity, I think, was more of a concern even than the overall election results as a whole, and a potential sign that Argentina isn't really making the progress towards the, conservative free market, like we thought that they were going to make. Now, we did see, and so as a result, like I said, their currency went from, was it 1,000 to 1,400 or something like that? Like you just saw the peso drop like a hot rock. It might have been 1,100 to 1,500. Either way, they've lost like 400 points in their currency. You've seen the blue market fall off. That's traded to almost a record low. The official currency is traded to a record low. And so you've seen, basically this lack of, money flowing in and farmers selling and all of these other things because of this uncertainty. And so basically the government really needs to kind of incentivize grain movement, grain exports. They need to get some more cash back in. They basically spent $1 billion last week trying to support their currency as it was being sold off. And so this is an attempt to do that. This is an attempt to kind of bring more bushels into the marketplace. This is an attempt to flow, more out into the export structure, hopefully generate some more cash for the economy. yada, yada, yada. But and I'm waiting to hear, I have, friends that are much smarter than I that are actually there, either in Argentina or have been in Argentina. And so I'm kind of waiting to pick their brains a bit more on it. In the sense of, does this really spur farmer selling? To me, all this does is encourage catch-up sales. So if you, went home long with a bunch of grain on Friday before the election, and you have to generate some cash flow, from an RG farmer standpoint, this is a perfect opportunity to do it. I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of a flush of additional beans and corn, potentially wheat. Wheat has been really slow on the farmer selling side into the market structure itself, into the pipeline. But I want to caution, this isn't really going to stimulate big flow like everyone is thinking that it's going to, simply because we have so much uncertainty. Now, the U.S. did come out, Besant said this morning that we have a mandate to support Argentina, which is interesting. And I have seen some folks kind of rationalize what he meant by that in the sense of like, they're our biggest, ally in Latin America and some of these other things. And so to see them, struggle would be a bad, sign, especially with all of the other things that we're doing. But yeah, from an overall grain standpoint, like I have lost count now of how many times that, you've seen an Argentina headline that is going to, well, this is a game changer. No, it's not. Like the Argentina farmer has been conditioned, basically to store all that they can store. We're still uncertain as to what this collapse in the currency is going to mean from an overall production standpoint. Do they just basically work to keep the grain out of the pipeline and maybe limit some of their, or does it make it harder for them to be able to plant the next crop or whatever? We were already going to see them increase corn acres in a big way versus soybeans because they're able to make money on corn. And we're already seeing, in addition to, Argentina is already slowing their crush. And so if you want to argue that, this is negative because you're going to see more RG beans flow into China, which is possible, which is, what I mean? Like that's probably the likelihood is you're going to see whole beans. You can't be bearish global meal supply because what you're seeing is in South America right now, the South American crushers, Brazil and Argentina specifically, are they're the exporters anyway, are bastardizing their own crush industry because the margins are in export. And because the margins are in export, they're not able to crush as much. And so that should help keep our product export solid. So there's so many moving pieces in all of this.
Yeah.
But with the negative sort of China news, not getting anything on Friday out of that. And then to have this morning where it's like, oh God, this is another way that we're going to hurt our exports. So here we go. Support should be around that $10 mark, and so if we can hold here, if 10.06 and 3/4 ends up being our low, and we can close back up, closer to that 10.20 sort of area, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we aren't working our way back up towards we've just been range bound. And so that's where we're at in this regard. Yeah. Lastly, obviously, what are we watching this week? What to watch? And so, big thing, does China ever show up? Do we see something? We did get some rumors last week, which was interesting that this happened on Friday and kind of got buried in everything else, that Brazil had bought 2 cargoes of U.S. soybeans. Eduardo, my friend at AgriInvest, does not think that it really happened. Like, you're going to have to show me, you know what I mean? Like one of those things where I'm going to have to see it show up. I'm not really sure that would work that way, but I want to remind everyone, that I think you may start to hear stories about this where like Brazil's buying a couple cargoes out of the US or some of these other things. Like I think you're going to start to see more in the way of arbitrage take place here as physical pipelines around the world gets weirdly different. You have basis opportunities here that you don't have there, and some of these other things. And so it's not going to be as simple as, oh, well, we're just replacing all of our Brazil sales with US loadings or whatever. But I think, you're probably going to start to hear more in the way of, arbitrage stories and things like that as we move forward. So we'll also watch harvest progress and see what that looks like. Looks like we're going to get a little bit of a rain delay, much needed in a lot of places. We were down to 10% moisture soybeans here in a lot of spots. And so we definitely needed, a 1/4 inch, couple tenths, whatever we got. The forecast calls for about 1 inch of rain to fall across much of the eastern corn belt. And so that, like I said, will be much, much needed. I am watching the western corn belt. It's going to be quite interesting out there for some folks on the physical side of the market, that have been expecting harvest, to get started relatively quickly for them. If you see a continuation of these rain delays, like looking at, Nebraska looks like they'll dry out a bit. The Dakotas look like they'll get a bit better. Minnesota, that's probably a very welcome forecast. But it'll be something to watch. Go ahead.
On this, yeah, so obviously
Yeah.
being the absolute grain market tourist that I am, I'm learning more from these shows than possibly anyone else. It does appear on social media. I saw a lot of farmers, big shout out to all the farmers, about, how they're anticipating they'll be done and dusted for the harvest
Yes.
soon, quicker than ever before. And they're like, what do we do with the rest of the year kind of
Yeah.
thing? All of a sudden, like almost, it feels like over the course of a few days, everyone's like,
We
maybe
slowed up a little
we're not
bit.
going to be
Yeah.
harvesting so quickly.
Welcome to the Thunderdome. What I say, like, it always is one of those things where harvest never runs as quickly as you expect, but it doesn't go as slow as you anticipate either, right? Like you just,
Oh, I like it.
it is one of those things. And that's why I always say like cash grain, like physical grain doesn't move. It oozes. And so nothing ever happens
Oh.
as quickly as you think it will, as you think it should. And so it'll be interesting to see just kind of how things are coming together. Locally, specifically for me, I've got a couple opportunities popping up on the soybean side of things because we have a crusher to the south, that, isn't able to access supplies up here. And so suddenly if you have some early harvested soybeans, you might get a 30-cent push that you weren't
Right.
anticipating. Now that's isolated, that's here, that's whatever. But there are going to be some interesting developments this week if we see some continuation of rain delays in certain spots. The drier forecast for the next week though is definitely going to be welcome in the north, Dakotas across Minnesota. We'll get, export inspections out this morning. We'll get crop progress this afternoon. Wednesday we get ethanol stuff. Thursday export demand. And, beyond that, it's just going to be watching harvest reports, seeing if China shows up at all and trying to judge what all this
China.
China, and trying to judge what this RG stuff means. Like, what is this gonna, how is this gonna influence movement? And, right now to me, the biggest thing that I'm watching, and that's why wheat's down 8 currently too, is like, Argentina is supposed to have X amount of bushels that they were supposed to be exporting into the world market. We really haven't seen that flow like we thought we would. And so does that pick up now with this opportunity and some of these other things? Like basically, so that's where we're sitting. We did get a flash sale to Mexico, 20,000 metric tons. Warm is about 70 miles south of Mexico-U.S. borders. So that on the livestock, and we'll keep stuff a bit firm or volatile anyway. I shouldn't talk straight out my butthole when it comes to livestock because I will. We'll see where we head for today. But right now beans are down 15. Like I said, holding that support. They're currently trading 10.09 on the November board. Corn's down around 4, holding that 420 level there, and wheat's down about 8. So we'll see where we finish and
I think
go from there.
wicked.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I can add a bit of news because I've seen it on the PIQ platform just before we went live. Is BP have finally kind of announced a long-awaited decision, basically, that they're going to cease development of its biofuels plant in Rotterdam, citing weak market demand and strategic shift back to profitable oil and gas projects. Again, this follows a pattern of abandoned biofuels incentives, particularly in Europe and stuff.
In Europe, do you think that has something to do? Sorry, do you think that has something to do with us really trying to push you know what I'm saying? Like, because, do you think it's partly because of the deforestation regulations and some of the other rules? So like sourcing domestic feedstocks?
To be honest, I think it's less about this because this is coming from the industry itself rather than the EU kind of putting it on. I just get the feeling that especially, a lot of these, actually PIQ posted quite a bit from some Bank of America reports over the weekend. They're saying like, big oil, funny enough, bizarrely is actually, suffering a little bit at the moment, especially with prices where they are.
Oh, I feel so bad for them.
They're really kind of, yeah, exactly, right. But it does feel like some of these biofuel projects, etc., are like luxury projects, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, this cut a belt where they can. I know there's been talk of buybacks being reduced, etc., etc. So maybe they're just like kind of looking to free up capital to keep investors happy. But it's definitely part of a trend, it seems to be, at least from where I'm standing.
Interesting. Do you have mandates across the EU for biofuel blend? Do you know? I might have to look and see. I don't think you do. I think you guys are kind of, I think it might be by country minimum. I might have to do some research now. You just got me all started in that.
Do you know what? I'll let you do the research.
Yeah, I will. I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe I'll remember though. You guys can keep me honest, see what happens. But yeah, that's about where we're at right now. We'll just see how the day continues. We'll get those inspections. Harvest reports will be a little slow. We'll get some news over how the weekend went, but with some of this rain, it'll be a bit slower. Hopefully we don't get any wind from what everyone says. There's absolutely no room for wind out there when it comes to stock health. So, we'll see what happens. Giddy up and happy Monday, you guys.
Awesome. I echo that sentiment. Happy Monday to everyone. New week, new me, etc., etc. But Angie, thank you so much for everything. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate you. And whatever you're doing, stay safe, keep it tight, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.